And I'm here with Mark Hancock. He's the CEO of Trail Life USA and writer of the great book, Why Are We Sitting Here Until We Die? Mark, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Andrew. It's great to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, share with us for a little bit for those who don't know where Trail Life USA actually began and how it's evolved today.
Yeah, I love talking about Trail Life USA. We started about 8 years ago, really in response to, it was apparent that the Boy Scouts were abandoning kind of their previous place that they had held for over 100 years, giving us astronauts and senators and presidents and generals and civic leaders. They just decided to take a different direction, and we knew that churches would have a difficult time continuing to work with Boy Scouts. So a number of folks around the country, about 300 volunteers around the country, got together and started talking about the idea of what it would look like. And so we launched in 2014, and we've grown to about 50,000 members in over 1,000 churches in all 50 states of the United States.
You know, one of the great things that I love about Trail Life USA is y'all help promote a strong, godly foundation to the boys that come in contact with Trail Life USA. And it's very important in this world that we live in today that we have a godly foundation, because if not, you know, Psalms chapter 2 says we can be like the wind, that the chaff is like blown to and fro. And if we're not careful, you know, we can fall into that trap. And, you know, Trail Life USA really brings it to the forefront for boys. And tell us why a godly foundation is important to you and Trail Life USA.
Well, wow, Andrew, I appreciate the introduction to that question. It's just beautiful because that's such a critical part of our mission. And, you know, when we look at boys today, we understand really the challenges that they're facing in our society and the effect that it's having on them. They're twice as likely to be in special education, 3 times more likely to have ADHD. They've fallen behind girls in every single academic category. There are now more girls going to college than boys going to college. There isn't an area that boys are leading except in suicides. The suicide rates for boys is just going through the roof. And it's really because there's a number of things that are affecting our society today. And we talk about 4 different things, and that's what you're hinting at, is that sort of thing, is that boys are unguided in our culture today. You know, 76% of school teachers are female, and 1 in 4 boys does not have a father in his home. And then the boys go to Sunday school, and there's a woman leading there, and they go to everywhere they go. There's women leading. Women are doing a great job leading. These single moms in the household doing an incredible task, and the girls in that house are seeing a beautiful model of strong female leadership. But boys are not getting that example, and so they're largely unguided. And they're also ungrounded. Like you said, we've taken away the foundations for truth. You know, a majority of Americans no longer believe that God and the Bible are the foundation for moral truth in our society. And that's just shocking. These boys are being raised in a culture where there is no foundation. There's no absolute truth. How do you teach a boy about character if you can't use the words right and wrong? And so you have to have it. You have to have a foundation for those sorts of things. And in Trail Life, it's the Word of God. That's what we set our foundation on. And the third thing, we talk about boys being unappreciated. You know, in our culture today, we tend to think that boys and girls are the same. They're kind of interchangeable. On Trail Life, we believe that boys and girls are different. We think boys have strengths and weaknesses that are unlike the strengths and weaknesses of girls. Not one better than the other. They're just different. And any engaged parent or any teacher who's paying attention knows that boys and girls are different. And so Trail Life, we recognize that they're different. We appreciate the differences in boys. And the final thing we like to talk about is that boys are largely uninspired in our culture today. You know, they don't have the risk and competition that we had in olden days. You know, in California, they've actually removed tag from the public school because they're afraid it's going to hurt the emotional foundation of those boy. Well, you know what? It's okay to lose every once in a while. Boys actually learn empathy by losing. They when they lose, they can identify with a loser, and they tend to understand what it is for somebody else to suffer. When we take that opportunity to lose or to win out of their lives, we change the structure, the way that they think. That's why we have so many young men with this failure to launch thing, because they haven't learned to try something, fail, try harder, and succeed, because we've buffered them from both failure and success because we don't want to hurt people's feelings. So these things are really coming all together. But the one that you mentioned there is the most powerful one, the absolutes, the fact that we don't have a strong foundation that for boys or girls or our culture to build itself on is just shocking for boys. Boys like to have boundaries. They like to know where what the rules are. I mean, they want to know that something's at stake, and they want to know that their strength is going to be appreciated and not discounted as being toxic or something wrong with them. And they need to understand. They need to have models of godly leadership so that they can have an idea of what it is that they can grow up into.
So you brought me to my next point, and there's a lot of kids today that grow up without a father figure in their home. How does Trail Life hope to show kids, boys in general, that they can trust in God the Father and He can be that father figure to them?
Yeah, that's a great question because we do understand that God our Father introduces Himself to us as our Father. He's not the president of us. He's not the king of us. He says, I'm your father. And so to use that word in the life of a boy who doesn't have a father, he has nothing to make that kind of comparison to. So and we have a lot of boys in our program that don't have a father in the program, but we also have a lot of men in our program who don't have a son in the program. And so what we're providing for those boys is a male-centric environment where boys get to see what it looks like to be a godly man. So they may not have a dad, but they have a dad like. They have a man that they can look at and say, wow, that is what a godly man looks like. My mom is amazing. She's doing a great job at home. She's taking care of the whole family. But that's what a man looks like when a man is godly. And that gives that boy a vision for who it is that he can be. Somebody who looks like him, who has the same sort of DNA. What it looks like for God to be fully alive in a man is what it can look like for that boy, for God to be fully alive in him.
Do you think that electronics today play a big part in why boys aren't, as, like you said, just into outdoor hobbies and things like that?
Well, they play a huge effect, but here we are using electronics. So there's so much good in it, but yeah, it is. But I see the biggest distraction in electronics is the parents that are no longer connecting with their sons in a direct way. The distraction of the parents. You can't grow a boy up with this thing in your face all the time. You have got to make eye contact. And this is something, Andrew, I think is fascinating in what we've seen coming out of COVID, a 300% increase in depression. I really believe that joy is harvested in the face of other people. And there's some neuroscientists who will tell you that there is a connection that is made face to face with people. And when we take that away and we move more and more towards electronics and we're not making that eye contact, boys want eye contact, physical touch, and focused attention. And it's hard to do that with the piece that electronics pays in our lives. So the biggest price, I think, is our interaction, parent to child, in terms of the way we manage electronics. Now, the other piece of it is how easy it is for them to lose themselves in that electronic and that digital world and actually function in there and lose the abilities to connect with people in a real way. And so we're finding kids that are spending so many hours in that virtual world and actually beginning to think that that's more real than the world they live in, which is why social media has such influence. They think that the people living those lives, that's real. They don't understand those people in social media also have problems in their lives. And sometimes they have zits on their face, and sometimes they trip, and sometimes their hair doesn't look great. And that's the world that we live in. So it is across the board causing a lot of different things. It's not the great Satan, it isn't a terrible thing, but it's something that we have to manage as believers and recognize that it's a tool that we can use and not let us distract us from the important mission that we have of raising the next generation.
So since the last time we talked, you began a radio feature called Raising Godly Boys Minute. Tell us a little bit about that and what you hope to cover by using that radio feature.
Yeah, I love that program. It's 1 minute a day, so it's a real quick catch, and it's actually you can get it on any of the podcast platforms. You can have it too. So just 1 minute a day, 5 days a week, just some encouragement for parenting. And it's aimed specifically as if you have a boy in your house. So not a lot of the stuff you can apply to your own life or to your daughter or the household. But for the most part, we're doing it with the intention of helping parents to raise godly boys. Just a minute long, download it and listen to it. You can also go to raisinggodlyboys.com and listen to old episodes of it. There's all kinds of resources at raisinggodlyboys.com, or you can go to traillifeusa.com and find the Raising Godly Boys link. But there's lots of great resources, and we're continuing to build that out. And we have the Wild Brothers and their Trail Hacks videos. The Wild Brothers are 4 brothers that are raised on the mission field, and now they produce these videos for us on outdoor skills, how to start fires, how to catch a fish, how to clean a fish, how to pack a backpack, how to find your way in the woods, all how to set up a tent, all sorts of things, these little 5-minute trail hacks that they have. You'll find that at Trail Life USA too. So we encourage parents, if you're looking for resources and working with your son, Raising Godly Boys, and also the trail hacks.
So with you being a father as well, and we've talked about raising godly boys, why is raising boys with a godly foundation so important to you?
Well, just like you said, how God is our father. If that masculine role isn't clear in terms of it being Christ-like, an example of what it looks like, he says, just like Christ loved the church, that's how your marriage should be. So if we're raising godly men who are loving their wives well and raising their families well, they are presenting to the world of image what it looks like for Christ to love the church. And so, and we need that. We're desperately in need of what it looks like for Christ to love his church, so that his church can love the world. And we're giving that through the examples that we're providing for boys and showing how to be a godly man.
And what examples do you mean when you say you're showing examples, like standing on the word and things like that? Is that what you mean by that?
Yeah, that, and just encountering challenges in life. There's always things to come. We're always going to encounter challenges. And the good news is we get to overcome them when we understand who we are in Christ and we operate in those principles. So what boys get to see in the outdoors, whether they're camping with Trail Life or going on some sort of a expedition or venture or even working at a meeting, they'll encounter difficulties, whether they're struggling with a particular badge or they're struggling to get up a mountain, or they're struggling to get a canoe downstream, or they're struggling because it's raining and their tent is flooding. Those are all opportunities to dig deep, to find out how to overcome and how to lean on Christ and how our faith is so important to us. And so without those kind of opportunities, you don't get to exercise your faith. And so we have boys in these situations where we don't plan them, but you run into these opportunities to have your faith challenged and to do difficult things and to overcome them. We had a boy who joined our program. His father was taken out of the household, horrible circumstances. The mother was left with 4 boys and a daughter. She had never had a job. She had homeschooled these kids. She never worked. Father was taken out of the house. Mother's overwhelmed with everything. Trail Life troop stepped in and said, "Hey, we want to help your boys. Can we get them in the troop?" And another family bought them the uniforms, everything that they needed. First hike that this boy went on was like a 50-mile hike. And he went one day into it and he thought he was going to die. The next day, he just dragged himself through. He told his mom, I wanted to call you and tell you to come pick me up. And the water sources weren't where they thought they were going to be. Everything was difficult. But on the 4th day, he saw the summit. And on the 5th day, he stood on it. And he said, "Mom, that's the hardest thing I've ever done, but I've learned that I can do hard things." Now, if you don't think that single mom who's taking her family through a really difficult thing, difficult circumstance, doesn't recognize the value in that experience of her son learning he can do hard things, I mean, that's just powerful stuff. And so that builds godliness. It builds faith. It builds experience of leaning on God. It builds experience of not quitting and continuing to try something. And if you fail, you're not done. You just try harder. Just figure it out. You've got men around you. You've got boys around you. You have support around you. Lean on that support. Ask for help. And those are valuable life principles that boys aren't learning anymore. And we expose those boys to those experiences in Trail Life.
And, you talk about overcoming and the word faith. And when we look at those things, we also have to be reminded that even we as humans, not just boys in general, but even we as humans, when we walk through storms and through valleys. It's for a strengthening of our faith. And just like that story you said, it encouraged me that you're teaching boys that they can be overcomers. And there's a lot of young people in our generation and younger generations that are too soon to call defeat before they try it again. And that leads to the suicide that you talked about, the depression, the anxiety, because they feel like they're failures. In what ways do you hope to encourage boys from here on out?
Yeah. Well, James tells us, he says, count it all joy when you fall into various trials and temptations, knowing this, that the testing of your faith produces patience. And we're going to run into these tests of faith. And the way that you pass it is by getting through it. And so the opportunity to do something difficult, to overcome, builds in us the sort of self-esteem. You don't build a self-esteem just by telling a kid that he's wonderful and trying to keep him from encountering any difficulty. You don't. You walk with him through those difficult things. You let him achieve something to find out that he can do hard things. That's what builds self-esteem. That's what builds the confidence to face difficult things. And you can't do that in this way that we're trying to do it as a society, by trying to wrap our boys in bubble wrap and keep them from getting hurt. Sometimes you got to send them out there to do something hard and let them overcome. The video game world, they get it. They understand boys really well. I wish we got it. Like they put the boys in a situation where they have levels, keeping score. You work hard. If you fail on a level, you get up and you try it again. And they have won over this generation of boys because they're doing such a good job at the stuff that we're failing at. We're keeping boys from failing. We're giving it, we're under challenging them. They don't want to be under challenged. That's why they're in the video game world, because it challenges them. And there's always another challenge. They love that. And they don't even mind failing because they just try again and they get it next time. And sometimes they understand, it took me 9 times to get to the next level, but I got to the next level. What a great experience. Why are boys rushing there by the thousands? Because that's how our brains are wired. And that's a world that makes sense. You put them in this world where you don't keep score in the soccer game because you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. The boys are like, why even try? We're not keeping score. I'm running really fast. And I'm not getting anything for having scored that goal or having made that basket or whatever it is. Boys, they don't try in a world where that reward isn't recognized. They don't try in a world where there aren't challenges that are set before them. They give up. That's why they're not going to college. That's why they're dropping out of school. That's why they're dropping out of life. That's why they're failing to launch. Because we haven't taught them to encounter difficult things, try harder, and overcome them. It's critical for the growth. It's critical for our society to raise a generation of boys. That's what we talk about, raising godly boys. Raise a generation of boys who don't just survive in this rising tide, but will turn back the tide itself. That they'll recognize the value of what it is that they've gotten through programs like Trail Life USA. The value that they've gotten there, help them to overcome in a way that boys who are not being exposed to that sort of adventure are not overcoming. They will be the ones who will show us the way because they live. We've exposed them to the wonder of adventure and trying hard and righteousness and absolute truth and all the things that it takes that wire a boy to succeed and to grow into a godly man. We need those things.
So tell folks how they can find out more about Trail Life USA or your resource, Raising Godly Boys.
Yeah, well, traillifeusa.com, traillifeusa.com, 2 L's in the middle. You go there, there's a tab you can click on Find a Troop, and it'll show you all the troops in your area. There's about 1,000 troops in the country. Or you can click on Start a Troop, and it shows you how you can get a troop started in your church. Also a tab up there called Raising Godly Boys, and that's where you can download the program, or you can get it on your podcast. Raising Godly Boys, and it's, like I said, it's 1 minute a day. There's also right now, Andrew, on our website, a free download of the book Raising Godly Boys. So if you go to Trail Life USA, the pop-up comes up, and just give us your email address and you get the electronic book. A lot of things that I've been talking about today you'll find in the book Raising Godly Boys. So that's available to your listeners right now for free.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, for coming on. It's always a pleasure to get to talk to you about Trail Life USA, and I look forward to the next time we get to chat.
Andrew, thank you for what you're doing. God bless you.
God bless you. Bye-bye.